Hey, welcome back to the Masonic Roundtable, a weekly program where Masons from around the world get together to talk about Masonic news and opinions in a friendly and social manner. Standard disclaimer applies. The thoughts and opinions expressed here are solely the opinions of the participants and do not represent any Grand Lodge statements or positions. Make sure you keep your conversations open for the public and on the level. My name is John Ruart. I'm a past master of the Patriot Lodge, number 1957, in Fairfax, Virginia. And who else do we have tonight? We have Jason Richards.
Hey everybody, thanks for joining us tonight. Jason Richards here, still the Senior Warden of Acacia Lodge, number 16 in Clifton, Virginia, which is still a good old part of Virginia.
Good. To his right, we have Nick Johnson.
Hey, how's it going? Nick Johnson, past master of some lodge called Corinthian Lodge, number 67, in Big Time Farmington, and the reason why we're late.
Now, is it named after the book of the Bible or the order of architecture?
I think it was named after the leather.
The leather. Cool. And to his right, we have another Johnson, Robert Johnson.
Hey guys, Robert Johnson coming live from the Mobile Masonic Command Vehicle. Once again, sorry about that. From Waukegan Lodge, where I'm a past master in Waukegan, Illinois. Thanks.
Coolio. Thanks, guys. Into Masonic news, this week we have one source that I kind of got ticked off to. Jason hinted my way of this article. We've mentioned them before, the Past Bastard, a Masonic satire site. One thing that's kind of funny is they used a picture of my survey. I was playing that thing for like, what's it, 2 months now? So I didn't know whether or not to be angry or flattered, but when I realized it was not about my survey, the clause retracted, and just more on, I think it was like surveying the craft, and the Grand Master only decided to pull one person. So he pulled himself, and everything was according to the craft.
I love it.
But I thought that was kind of funny. I don't know if that means I made it. That I, like, what do they say? Music artists, they feel they're validated once Weird Al parodies them.
Yes.
You're not big until Weird Al makes fun of you.
You've drawn enough attention from this person or these guys, whoever they are. That's kind of awesome.
Well, that's the only problem with that argument is the fact that if they get made, making fun of somebody validates them, they just kind of validated like the Northern Jurisdiction Survey.
It's a good survey, right?
No,
Ouch.
bad survey.
What?
We talked about that last week. Hearing fallout from that. That was interesting. But yes, if you like good surveys, that's the segue into the plug for my survey, which only has a few more weeks left. Again, I'll be closing on St. John's Day. You can go to tinyurl.com/Masonic survey. No, I do not have a paper printable version. Unfortunately, guys have been asking to bring that to Lodge. With the way that the survey form is, you do have to kind of walk through it before it lets you. I guess if you wanted to, you could start to fill it out with dummy data and hit print on your computer on each page. That's all I got for you right now, but I'm days away from having a baby, and not going to happen.
You're looking surprisingly trim for a man who's about to have a baby.
My svelte figure, red, is slimming.
There you go. Softens your look.
I was going to say you've been working out, dude. Looking good.
It's a healthy glow I've got. All right, so we talked about the Past Bastard. Fun stuff. And another big one. This was on the other great Masonic news source, which is Chris Hodap's blog. he posted a link to an article from the Motley Fool, which is a financial planning website, about the guys about to retire in the United States of America. And they did a survey of what they can expect in their retirement. And they did some good surveys, to which they talked about some of the social connections they're going to miss when they retire. They are going to miss most about hanging out with their friends and coworkers. Having that bond after retirement is something that the current generation, baby boomers, we've talked about generations in the craft, those about to retire now are going to have this strong desire for more social connections after they retire, after work. HODAP then pulls that thread and says, well, you know, when guys retire, they're going to need to have an organization. If they're not married or if they're divorced or whatever, they're going to need a thing to get them together with other people and hang out. And why can't that be Masonry? So let's not focus on these young guys. Let's also consider that there will be.
The club is called Florida.
Right.
They're supposed to go to Fort Lauderdale. That's what they're supposed to do.
Did you ever see that Conan O'Brien joke about that, where he was doing the state quarters, right? And one of the state quarters, he says, Florida, commemorative quarter on the back, where America goes to die, and it's a person in a wheelchair. Oh my God.
I'm sure there are Masonic lodges in Fort Lauderdale.
And we've lost both our baby boomer and our Florida viewers. That's great.
I love the boomers, so I actually, it's kind of interesting that this gets mentioned, in that my lodge sees a lot of guys that are now joining. They've retired and they're looking for something to do, and they always wanted to be a Mason, and they just kind of said, hey, you know what, maybe today I'm going to do it. So, you know, it's actually, I'm not actually that shocked that people are showing up that are boomers, these guys. So, you know, as long as they're doing the work and they're doing it well, as long as they don't take away my education, I don't care. Come on in.
And you know what? I've known a number of boomers that were kind of late bloomers when it came to the craft. You know, they're only a couple years in, and they're as bright-eyed and bushy-tailed as the young new guys to the craft as well.
Yeah, I have to agree with that. Like, they're not. When I think of, like, as a younger Mason, and I thought about it for years, you know, there was always that big age gap where I would feel uncomfortable. What I want out of the fraternity is definitely not what they want, and they have never seen or saw the fraternity as what I wanted. And a lot of the baby boomers and stuff within that generation, they do. They might not see they might not go into the fraternity for what I wanted, but they're totally cool with giving me what I want as long as they're getting what they want out of it. Also, I have no problem with boomers at all in Lodge. We have so many fans too, and that's not just, you know, buttering you guys up.
Yeah. I mean, there's a couple points to make about that. First, you know, we've always said for the past 2 years on the show that a lot of it has to do with how well you're being mentored after you come in through the door. That is not an age thing. That is, how well does your lodge provide you what you came in for and more, right? The second thing is that if you really step back and look at the Motley Fool webpage, it's really nothing surprising that we are, as human beings, social creatures, and there have been thousands of social studies that have shown that we need connections with other people, and that will include retirement. So it's really kind of nothing new, in my opinion, but HODAP just wanted to take that extra step and say, by the way, you know, the next to greatest or next to largest generation is about to retire, and they're going to need to do something. And of course, we also know now that the millennials are actually the largest generation over the boomers, but we're just starting to get to work. So there you are. All right. Let's move into our next segment, which is
The Masonic Monday question on Tuesday.
What Jason said.
Nick.
Whoa, that's amazing! I'm freaking out right now. All right, guys.
You're
Okay,
like
so
Knives Chow
Yeah.
from Scott Pilgrim.
whew, that was
Guys.
awesome. Okay.
Oh, awesome.
Oh. All right, so
No, that was
last.
just creepy.
Oh, dude, righteous. Wow, I've been watching way too much Ninja Turtles. Thanks, children. Anyway, so the question for last week was concerning a certain mountain. Now, obviously, since it's a Masonic Monday question, the mountain must have a Masonic connection. So, with that, yes, we did not have very many answers to this question. Jonathan Primo got it, and so the answer was Mount Hermon, which I'm sure all of you remember from Psalm 133. And the highest ancient temple that was discovered on that particular mountain was Qasar Antar. So good job, Jonathan Primo. Good job, who else do we got here? Myron Nicholson, Joey Boyer, Mike Hambrecht, Jim Seitz, and who else do I have here? And I think that's actually it. There were not that many people who... Oh, Chris Streeper. He was number one. Sorry, Chris, but you were number one, so good job. I think that's it, but if I missed you, you can write me in the comments. Care of John Ruark, who will gladly answer your emails for you. So, the current Masonic Monday question for the week of May 30th, 2016 is, in World War II, there was a ship, and this ship was sunk off of the coast of Greenland. It was made famous by the fact that as it was sinking, there were very few life jackets remaining. 4 chaplains were on this particular ship. It also happens to be the subject of a degree in this degree system. If you have the answer, send it to masonicmonday@gmail.com. Don't forget to include your lodge name, lodge number, and the hashtag Memorial Day. Back to you, John.
All right. Thank you, Nick.
Come on, Nick.
What?
Come on, dude.
Memorial Day, I had to do that one. Sorry. I get yelled at if I don't do one like that. You're welcome. You're welcome.
I
Don't
have words
answer
for
it.
it. Yeah.
Don't answer it.
All
You'll
right.
get in trouble. Remember, they will cancel the new Defender series on Netflix, and I, for one, will cry tears of rage.
Don't
Back
make
to
me
you,
cry. Thank
Don't
you.
make me cry.
Good. All right.
I do too much already.
This is kind of an interesting topic that I wanted to talk about for a while, which is we've talked about religion and masonry. We actually have a couple of other shows lined up if we can get our guest hosts lined up and their schedules working. But we've talked many times and heard many explanations that while Freemasonry is not a religion, it is highly religious. And that becomes this fine line that we dance around between talking about salvation and talking about being a good follower of your particular faith, and then separating that from your masonry life, which has a lot of religious influences to it, but does not teach any specific dogma or salvation. But that line kind of gets crossed, in my opinion, when we start talking about Masonic religious observance ceremonies. So Nick is really the expert on this week's show of some of the ones that he's been to and been part of. So having not been to many, I'm going to defer to Nick and let him talk about some of the ones that he's been to and been part of, and then we can kind of deconstruct that and see where that goes. So Nick, you've been to a couple St. John's Days observances and maybe an Easter observance or two. tell us what those experiences were like.
Sure. I'll preface this by saying that when I was coming up with this topic and we were kind of chatting back channel, it was one of those ideas that right now we're coming up. My commandery has been for the last 2 years. This is going to be our third year hosting an Ascension Day observance, and I kind of was interested in this idea of a mixture of essentially religious practice and Freemasonry. And so I was doing some research, and Freemasonry as a craft, as something that we do, is at least under the conception that Dr. Anderson wrote within his constitutions in 1723, is this idea of an organization where all men agree, and essentially it's breaking bread with someone else. But as with all things, especially at that time, religion was still a major component of everyday life. And so for us, religion, without sounding this way or that way, is very strangely married in certain back parts of Freemasonry. And so when we go back to it, originally the Grand Lodge would meet on a quarterly schedule. Some of them still do, and they would use the calendar years, or the calendar days, which were the quarter days. And those quarter days were the Spring Festival, which was Lady Day, the Summer Festival, which was St. John the Baptist's Day. You had Michaelmas, which was the fall celebration, and then you would have Christmas as the winter celebration. Now, all of these, incidentally, also fall during the four, equinox and solstices that occur every year. Solstice, and so it's kind of Freemasonry coming from a culture that had a religious tone was, by its very nature, going to draw from the culture with which it was in. And so you find within Freemasonry, on St. John's Day, lodges, especially back in the 1700s, meeting at a lodge room, which is usually a tavern, wearing regalia, and then walking to a local house of worship, often a Church of England, Anglican church, and they would sit for ceremonies. And they would sit there in regalia, and then after they were done, they'd process back to the lodge building, which was often the tavern again, and they would close the lodge. And it was considered normal. And, a lot of lodges, when I talk to them, don't realize that this was a tradition, and it was such an important concept, this idea of going out in the public with your apron, that when William Preston, went out, processed with his lodge under a modern's charter, he processed, and after he returned, he was given a expulsion letter and told to leave. And there's some speculation that this was because it was uncomfortable for those in leadership to have this very dogmatic concept presented within the craft. So, the practice itself went away fairly recently. I mean, for the most part, for most lodges, they don't do it. But some do. Some have continued to do it. But it was spotty, and, at least when I was looking through returns in Minnesota, it was very much upon the will and pleasure of the master. Some years they would be like, oh, not only do we not care if you go to a church on St. John's Day, but go ahead on Easter if you want to. I mean, we don't care. And then the next year, like literally the next year, the next Grand Master would say, no, that is completely outside of the bounds of the landmarks. So this topic itself is very controversial, simply because of just the dogmatic character that you see within these religious observances. So.
Interesting. So, I mean, you've you continue to do so with your lodge, right? Your lodge still has
Interestingly enough, the lodge that I'm in does not.
Okay.
Corinthian does not, and it's kind of interesting. You know, we have members in my lodge that are Muslim, Jewish, they are deists, everything that you can imagine in that respect. And so our altar is filled with books of many flavors and many different religions. And so we've not had a procession at Corinthian Lodge ever. I've looked through the records all the way back to 1857, 1856. There's no record that Corinthian has ever done this. Now, interestingly enough, the lodge that I was formerly a dual member of, Faribault Lodge, when I was a member there, I said, hey, maybe we should try this out. And, you know, this was something that had been done many years in the past, that they would process down to oftentimes the cathedral, because in Faribault, the first cathedral in the United States was formed in Faribault. It's an Episcopal one. And so they would process there, they would, you know, have services, and then they process back. All this coming from a dispensation. You know, and interestingly enough, even within that lodge, you know, some years they do it, some years they don't, depending on who the master is. You know, it's a very interesting and kind of touchy feeling. Now
in Virginia, I mean, we usually get an edict from the Grand Master every year. Even though it's a different Grand Master, they usually repeat the same edict, which says, on both St. John's Day, while we're not mandating anything Masonic, any Masonic observance, we highly recommend that if your church has a St. John's Day service, go ahead and attend. That's almost verbatim what the text says.
And you know what? That makes perfect sense. Actually, I know a lot of Prince Hall Grand Lodges continue to host this tradition. The one in Minnesota has done it, I think, uninterrupted for its entire history, and they just go to a church that's chosen. Even when the Grand Master is not even of a Christian faith, they still go, because it's just a tradition that is built in. And so it's a very interesting thing. Now, you know, contrast that to the Knights Templar, the commandery, which is almost fully accepting of an entire Christian identity, to the point where they have Christmas observances, they have Easter observances. At least in my commandery, we have Ascension Day observances, and those are of a very, very dogmatic understanding. And in some respects, you could almost say, at least for some of them, it's a very almost Calvinist. I mean, you know, we do the Lord's Prayer with debts and debtors and all these other things, and so you've got a very almost dogmatic side, and then a side like Masonry, which says, you know, I am not really sure if we should be engaging in this. And so there's always this open question of, should we be doing this?
So Jason, should we be doing this?
Yes.
Okay.
And here's why. So I'm going to take the contrarian view to John's contrarian view, and say, you know, it's like when I was setting up the show page. Clearly, Freemasonry is not a religion. However, the beauty of the fraternity is that you have the ability to celebrate religion as a member, even if it's not a religion that you in particular subscribe to. And I think that's just one of the things that makes us great as an organization, that we can say, okay, you know, when we come in these doors, you know, we all profess faith in, you know, some sort of supreme being, but we can all meet each other on the level and call each other brothers, despite having a different conception or a different belief system about the creator of the universe. And I think part of that acceptance is celebrating religion in and of itself. So if, you know, my lodge were to go to a Buddhist temple or go to a worship service of a faith other than my own, I'd totally do that, because I can celebrate a religion that's different from my own without necessarily ascribing to it or believing in it.
And you bring up an excellent example there as well, because I was reading many years ago, in England, attending divine services, England and Scotland, is a very integral part of everything that they do. And I was reading, at least, I'm not sure what part of Wales, but in some part of Wales, the community of Masons attended a Gurdwara, which is a Sikh temple, in full regalia. They met everyone there, and they shook hands, they broke bread, and they said, "Welcome to the community." The members of the Sikh community said, "Thank you for welcoming us." And it was an ability to open a door to a faith community that might have not even known the existence, one, of Masons, and also that we are there for them. Now, at least it was kind of interesting, because then there was another article that I read in a different part of, in actually England this time, where they have a fund, and they actually paid for a Hindu statue to be put in a Hindu temple. And at least on Reddit, it blew up the internet there. It was like, well, I'm okay with attending services, but is it really okay to be buying this? Isn't this just the same as buying a cross for something? Or yeah, I mean, it was seriously, it turned into almost it was a fight. I mean, it was like, this is the worst thing that could possibly happen to Masonry ever. You shouldn't be buying this stuff. We're supposed to be adogmatic. I can't believe this happened.
So I'm my feeling of it is more
Before you rebut, just real quick, Nick keyed in on a word several times, which is the second part of my argument, which is building community. And religious services and religious centers are communities in and of themselves. And I see the Masonic celebration of a faith tradition as a way to integrally bring the community together. Now, on to John's rebuttal.
It's not a rebuttal. It's a different lens that I'm looking at this concept of Masonic religious observances.
It's kind of a rebuttal.
It's a complete rebuttal to everything you just said.
I'm offended.
The way that you approach this was, of course, we should embrace other religions and be more inclusive, and that is what one of our foundational tenets of Masonry is being respectful of those with different religious faiths and backgrounds, and stop worrying about what divides men, but what unites them. On the other hand, I look at it more internally. Do I want to mix my religion and Masonry? And so the best analogy I can think about how to describe where the weird feeling I get about this is, so I'm a Christian and I'm a Mason. And I'm a Christian Mason, but I'm not a Mason Christian, in the sense that bringing aprons into church, that's kind of where I get kind of weirded out, right? That I can bring my faith into the prayers in lodge, and I can pray to my deity, right, when I'm in lodge. But I don't say, here's a good example, I don't say Masonic prayers in church per se, and I don't bring my regalia into my church. And so,
yet you treat Masonry as basically a Bible study.
But see, that's the beauty of it, is that I can learn things about the Bible from you, and you're a heathen. So that doesn't mean that there's not inspired.
Don't tell the Grand Line in Florida.
Yeah, right. But am I making myself clear? It's just kind of mixing the waters of celebrating your fraternity and celebrating your religion, and of course we have pretty much the axiom of you have to believe in a supreme being to be a Mason, but the converse isn't true either. It's not a two-way diode.
No, of course not.
Robert?
When you're looking at the construct of Masonry, and we know we have this mixed origin. This mixed origin, we're talking about Egyptian initiatic experiences and mystery schools from Greece and all these different things that kind of culminated into what is now considered mainstream Freemasonry. As Masonry, we all know that Masonry, when it really became organized, was underneath the religion of the country. And because of that, when rituals were then written or passed to be official rituals, they necessarily contained those qualities of the religion of the land. You can look at the Sovereign Grand Lodge of Egypt right now, and their rituals, they're clandestine still, but their rituals are highly Egyptian in nature. What I find crazy is that I'm like you, John. I wouldn't mix my religion with my Masonry, except that I frequently do, in the fact that since I'm a deist, Masonry is almost the religion.
Well, yeah, and I'll add to that and say that I have drawn so many new influences to make me apply a critical eye to my religion differently that I've learned by being a Mason, right? And that's something that what a guy told me before I joined. I said, "How do you like it? And do you have any conflicts with your faith?" He says, "No, I've actually become a better Christian after becoming a Mason because now I will read some Bible verses twice a different way."
Yes.
So,
I have a slight question then, right? I mean, like, does the Christian get more out of Freemasonry than any regular Mason would get out of Freemasonry? Because essentially what's been built into Freemasonry since at least the 1700s is Christianity. Yes, the Duke of Sussex pulled it all out, but he didn't pull it out all over here. I mean, this is highly...
He pulled out most of it. There's still some in there, especially in the ritual in Virginia, at least.
Yeah. So we're looking at, though, I mean, Masonry is, no doubt, in my mind, and I'm not a Christian, is probably better for a Christian. A Christian probably gets a lot more out of Masonry than a non-Christian gets. And I feel that way, I think, because I think the inherent verses and the legends surrounding the craft come right from that.
mhm.
It's like if you joined an organization that was all about Doctor Who, Jason, you're a big Doctor Who fan, you'd probably find a lot of great stuff within that organization. Now, I might join that organization because I just want to hang out with guys and have a good bond and a friendship, even though I hate Doctor Who.
What?
I mean,
Take it back!
Are you gonna also kill a puppy on this air right now? Is that what you...
Hey,
I'll
two
do
on two, man. I'm behind you, RJ.
I think he was drowning kittens before he came home.
clawed to shreds.
RJ hates cats.
Well, and it's a very, that's a very good
And
point
babies,
that you
too.
make. Because but the thing is, it's such a funny thing is if you look through the lectures in Masonry, it's such a grab bag. I mean, we're quoting Shakespeare in some of it. We're grabbing out the trivium and quadrivium and just pulling that out and saying, you need this too. And so, you're right.
You stick a submarine in there in some jurisdictions.
Yeah, you stick submarines in places where they don't, and so, phrasing. But, that's the thing is like, Masonry is kind of interesting in that it's both, and I think this is something that people kind of get confused when it comes to the ritual, is that the ritual was written by men. In fact, we know exactly who some of those writers are, and we know where they come from with the sources. So, instead of, I think we just have to sit there and think to ourselves, what does the ritual say to me? Why is Shakespeare being quoted here? Why is this biblical passage being quoted here? What in the heck is this thing for, right? I mean, but you're right. In some respects, there are certain allusions. But I can tell you, for a Lutheran, I'm a pretty crappy Lutheran because I've read the Bible once, I think, And so, I kind of know some of it, but, again, I'm a terrible Lutheran. And so if there's an illusion that's coming forward with me, it's going to fly so fast over my head, it's not even funny. But at the same time, because I'm coming at it with an open mind, I think it gives me a different perspective. And then maybe somehow one day I find it. I don't know.
That's really what's key, and what I've taken away from what Jason has said as well, is that even though not a Christian, would I attend a Saint John Day event with my lodge if they decided to go? Hell yeah. Why? Because I'm tolerant and I respect their religious beliefs and I want to be there for them, not only just in thought, but physically. I would definitely do that. I mean, I have been to mosques. I have been to temples or tikvas. I've been to just about every kind of religious ceremony or observance day you can think of and relates to, like a weekly or monthly thing. I do that because I have a genuine interest in religions, and I support my friends. So I don't necessarily have a problem with it, but it's kind of like these guys, maybe like myself. I took my oath on a Bible because I respected the tradition. So
Well, you're right. Sometimes there's tone deafness that happens. I mean, one time somebody, I'm trying to remember when it was. I think it was right when I joined, or maybe the year before. In the newspaper that we get every year, one of the St. John's days, they had stapled in a offering envelope, to bring to church. It was a special blue envelope that you put your money in. And I have a Jewish friend, and he's like, "What am I supposed to do with this? I pay once a year. What am I supposed to do with this?" And I said, "I don't know. Put like a couple bucks in, I guess. I don't know. Drop like." You know what they're gonna do? They're gonna laugh and say, "I think you walked in the wrong organization here, dude," because that's not how we do things. So there's tone deafness all the time. It's just crazy, But yeah.
I would love, for the record, I would love for my lodge to do some sort of observance, just because for no other reason than, again, to support the 99% of the members of my lodge. And B, get out there, be seen.
Mm-hmm.
But I do see where John comes from when he talks about his reservations.
I guess I'm just the weird one. That's all I can figure. It's like,
well, out of all of us, you look around your circle of friends, and if you don't know who the weird one, it's you. So John is that guy.
1 out of 4 are weird.
Martha, who's the weird one, right? Maybe it's John. I'm voting Juan because he's not here.
Well, and what's kind
That's
of funny
true.
is it totally feels uncomfortable, right? The idea that, because when I've gone to these St. John's observances, it's awesome when we go to somebody else's church. But if we ever went to my church, I'd be kind of confused and weirded out. Like, I don't even talk about the fact that I'm a Mason and I'm in ELCA. We're pretty chill. Jesus is just chill in there. So
that's my point. That's exactly my point.
Tom Berlin would freak out.
I would feel weird sitting in the front row at church with an apron on.
Pastor Tom looks like out from the pulpit at you. Yeah.
Are these guys some cooking class around here? Or why are they wearing the aprons?
Okay, so my point wasn't lost. It's not about not being tolerant of other people's religious faith. It's just, where does it cross the line in Masonry coming into your holy house, right?
So, just, I guess, a quick question then for you, John. Do you feel like it's like your dad, who has been a Ford guy all your life, and then you pull up in the driveway in a Chevy? Is that kind of what it feels like for you? Is that what you really like? Do you think that your church maybe just has a stigma about it, and that's why you would feel uncomfortable?
No, and fortunately, I guess it's more of a spiritual thing, I guess, than a.
Okay.
But I do know. We've talked about religion in general and how there are whole churches and religions that are anti-Mason and are clear on that. And yeah, don't show up for a St. John's Day observance there.
Not show up for St. John Day observance at the West Baptist
Westboro Baptist Church in full Masonic regalia with your new order tattoo.
Yes. Oh man, upside down pentagon or pentagram or whatever, and just talk about how you are really into everything Charlie Manson ever said. You're like, oh, man, that guy had some really awesome ideas. But it's so funny too. As I was thinking about it, is okay. So in Commandery here, they have this thing called the Ralph Kirk, and one of the things that you can get points for. I mean, it's one of these many point things where you get a certain number of points, you get plaque, yay. But one of the funny things about it is that it says attend a local church service in your Commandery uniform. And I looked at that one, and during my year, I was like, we should totally go to a church in our Commandery uniform. But then I kept looking at my Commandery uniform, and I'm like, do I want to be caught dead in public with this thing on?
Well, yeah. So I'd love to see someone out here with
and you don't even have the chapeau.
with the poodle hat. Let's get that poodle hat. Just sit in the back row and just don't say.
They'll be like, why is the Salvation Army here? I mean, they're in the wrong place.
We thought the ladies wore the hats in church.
Yeah. It's like, oh man. And so they pushed this thing so hard. They're like, you gotta go. I'm like, but where? I'm not doing it in my church. They just sit there and go, who is that weirdo? And so it comes again to, it's like, I agree with you a little bit, John. Is that it's this idea of separating a little bit. You want this like buffer zone of this is my Freemason, this is my religion-y thing, and let them keep the negative on negative so it bounces off.
Well, it's like when they say, we're gonna have an event at Lodge, and guys, bring your girlfriends or your wives, but not both at the same time.
But I'm ching.
The old joke.
Yes. You can have your masonry and your religion, just not at the same time. All right, Jason, what have we got on social media? Because a lot of guys have other comments like that.
We've had some great on the Facebook page tonight, so I recommend everyone check those out. Let's see. Here's something interesting from Brother Angelo Mino. He says, in Ecuador, we attend several religious services, and we even have Masonic events in big cathedrals or basilicas. Here, all the lodges attend church, or here, all the Masons regularly attend church with our wives and kids to celebrate the feasts of St. John. The only requirement is that we must be invited by the church and pastor. We do not actually request to come as Masons.
Wow.
Cool.
So that's pretty sweet.
Like if you were the pastor and you were addressing the congregation, and this year at the St. John Day festivities, we're gonna have the local Masonic lodge come down.
Sunday.
You'll buy the whole price of the pew.
We're bringing in the New World Order. So here's something interesting from Brother Chris down in Texas. He disagrees with Robert. There's no surprise there. Going back to your statements that Christians would ostensibly get the most out of Masonry, he says he believes a practitioner of the Jewish faith would get far more out of Freemasonry, as most of the biblical text contained within the degrees is derived directly from the Old Testament.
Sure. I mean, to an extent. I mean, you do have the first 3 degrees in Masonry consisting of Old Testament ideas. You've got 4, 5, 6, and 7 consisting from Old Testament ideas. But then you've also got 8 and 9. Okay, more Old Testament. But then you got a whole right just for New Testament. And then some of the everything Rose Croix in the Scottish Rite. That's all New Testament stuff. So
the Scottish Rite.
Yeah, the Scottish. That's why they just call it the Rite. You guys know that, right? They call it the Rite.
All right. All right.
Birth rate isn't even right, so there you go.
I can definitely agree with that statement that I would probably just amend what I said to Judeo-Christian. I think that covers both. I think it would mean something more additional, something special. So it's really special for anybody who follows those two faiths. It's probably really nice.
Mm-hmm.
Just remember, RJ, 33 wrongs don't make a right.
Oh, ooh.
33 wrong. 33 wrong don't equal a white hat.
Ooh.
Ooh. I
Ooh.
like yours better.
Rage. Anyway, getting back to social media before we get ourselves into more trouble. Brother Blake from Australia says that his Templar Great Priory events conclude with church services in full cap, mantle, and tabard.
Awesome.
We get some funny looks.
Well, yeah, well, especially when you look literally like the KTs from the old times. I'm sure they're like, why are these Renaissance guys here?
Is the Ren Fair in town?
On the way to Ren Fair and
Turkey legs.
Which I guess is better than, guys in the poodle hats, and they come in, they're like, okay, where is Pirates of Penzance, and why didn't I get a ticket? Seriously.
Oh, man. So there's another comment that says, if you've ever read the entire Bible, I have not, bad Christian, you'd realize that Masonry is pretty much a Bible study. There's biblical text scattered throughout every one of the Blue Lodge and York Rite degrees, and a lot of it.
True, and other things as well. Because Masonry is a grab bag.
Yes.
Well, Christianity is also a grab bag. I mean, in respect to the allegories contained, are also contained in every other religion worldwide.
Yeah.
But not the myth of the flood.
No, I mean
That's specific to Christianity. That's never happened anywhere else in the world.
didn't you do a presentation on that?
I heard a presentation by some guy once. I think it was in Pennsylvania.
Free plug. I want Jason Richards to turn that presentation into a book, and I want to read it. It's going to be amazing.
You heard it here first.
I'd buy that.
I really would.
It'd be a short book. It'd be like shorter than Freemasonry at Oak Island.
It could be 94 pages, one page longer than the official version of the Scottish Rite Northern Jurisdiction degrees. 94 pages, that's all you need.
Wow.
Nice. That's almost a challenge. Oh, let's see. I'll go through maybe one more.
I like this one. How do these churches feel about Freemasons attending lodge? Because I can tell you, they get a little bit confused. Not even kidding. So we one year we decided we wanted to go to the Congregationalists, and Congregationalists, whatever anybody wants to say, they're the nicest people on earth. They are crazy welcoming, right? So we show up, and luckily some of the people are members of that church. So that's how we were able to go there, and it was just kind of funny. The first year that we went there, because we went there for 2 years. The first year they were like, "Whoa, these guys are kind of cool," and then the second year it was more like not just cool, but hey, how's it going? My name is so and so. You might know my cousin. And so it's true. It's like builds communities in a way that you just really don't anticipate that it's going to do that, but then it does. It's a beautiful thing, I think. But
do you guys ever do you guys have to clear this stuff with the churches, or do you guys just show up? I mean, has there ever been if we're showing up, you guys can't be?
No, we always clear it with them because it's not our house. So, it's one of those that I guess that's a good thing to point out is, if you are planning on doing one of these, and I know a lot of jurisdictions still continue to do this, I really recommend if you are going to go, some one of the guys was saying, they always get invited, they don't ask. Well, when you've been a forgotten organization in a town, you kind of have to put yourself out there. So if you are going to ask, ask. Second, make sure that the community that you're going to be visiting actually is okay with you being there. You know, UCC is pretty okay with it. Episcopalians are really cool. You know, we didn't try the Lutherans, but maybe they will be too someday. I don't know. We've never asked. But you know, it's one of those that it's just the idea of making connections. And so if they're not cool with you being there, you're not going to be cool being there. You know,
Yeah.
and that's the biggest thing is you're in somebody else's house and you're just doing what you're trying to establish connections. So that's really what I would say to that, I guess. But
So
and I guess I can screen share. I can screen share when we were there. Let me see if I can figure this out. I know I'm taking over the whole damn show.
So while you're pulling that up, Nick, we had a couple people asking questions about where we got this week's image. So just wanted to let everyone know this was actually an image that I took of the big cathedral or Duomo in Florence, Italy, when my wife and I were there about 2 years ago. So this, you see the lamb with the cross and a lot of stained glass imagery, but so that was really interesting. Kind of the juxtaposition of the the meek lamb with the cross and the flag of the Crusades. So realizing that the Knights Templar are, arguably, one of the appendant bodies most into religious observance, it just seemed like a good fit.
So here's me.
Yeah, too.
In my beautiful apron, sitting outside the Congregational Church in Big Time Faribault. And, it was a really nice time. It was really hot. But we created a lot of connections. A lot of people were really happy to see us. And Pastor Jan has had us back a couple of times. It was a great time. I mean, honestly, again, this is one of those ookie-wookie kind of things. And, it really works if you're in an old town. If you're in an old town that has a lot of old churches, it works really well because, Freemasonry being one of the oldest probably organizations in that town is going to be revered in a different way than if you're in like a suburb, something like that. But yeah, honestly, it really does create a lot of connections. Now, one of the funniest stories from the first time we did it, we had a bagpiper. We went to the Episcopalian Cathedral. And the bagpiper, we start at 9:30, 9 o'clock for services at 9:30. Bagpiper starts up, and you know how bagpipes are. Right. All of a sudden, there's apartments up above the lodge. The guys are opening their windows saying, "Shut the blankety up! Shut up! You know what time it is? 9:30 in the morning!" And I'm just laughing. I'm holding the Bible, and I'm just going,
That's awesome.
oh man! Look, do it for that too. Get people up. Get ready for the day. Just saying.
Yes, because that'll invite you back next year.
I would.
Let's start wrapping up then.
I was gonna say I was really hoping Nick would share the version of his photo that he had a raptor with him.
That was the scariest day. I honestly can tell you. Chris Pratt said he trained that damn thing.
He defined it.
Still went after me.
You define one of those raptor suits that they use to scare people in those prank videos.
All right, we're losing focus. Let's bring this thing home. Got in the raptor suits for some reason. How about RJ?
They're amazing.
RJ, take us home.
Well, I just want to say that I learned a lot from Nick specifically. I think we all did. Not have ever attended any religious service or event with my lodge outside of having an annual Christmas party, which of course is centralized on Santa Claus and nothing else. It was really enlightening. I have never been against doing something like that. Like I said, I think it is probably, as these gentlemen have pointed out tonight, it adds to a real sense of community. and support of your fellow brothers. So if you get to do that, you get out there and do it. And just like all things in life, really the key is participation. Um, just do it. And thanks for watching this show. And if you like Masonic podcasts, please check out Whence Came You, 9:30 Sunday nights. And that's it. So thank you very much, everybody.
And if you want a preview of Robert's book collection, listen to this week's episode of WCY.
Oh, it is a little wonky.
He does a walking tour of his bookshelf, not unlike mine behind me, where he actually has good books. And
Books over there.
yeah, so there's a few. All right, thanks, Robert. Nick?
Sure. I guess I'll close with because I already talked a lot too much already with this one, but I'll end with kind of the commandery focus because we kind of didn't hit that point. But in commandery, it's kind of an interesting deal is that it's a very Christian dogmatic concept, but you can still do some interesting things with all of those. So Christmas observances are really, really, if you have the right speaker, and I learned that the hard way, if you have the right speaker, you can really have a magical experience. It really creates an atmosphere of getting ready for the new year, getting ready for your commandery year. And it's also just a really nice time to have dinner because, face it, we're Masons. That's what we like to do. I've never been to an Easter observance, although I kind of wanted to during my term, but we didn't do that. And so for us, the biggest thing that we do is Ascension Day. And Ascension Day, for those that don't know, is when Jesus came back for another 40 days, played Xbox, partied a little, taught a little, hung out, and then, just like the end of Greece, hopped in a car and flew to the clouds. But no, just kidding. That was all sacrilegious, and I'm going to hell for that. So anyway, Jesus came back and taught everybody, and it's a really cool idea of this, good versus evil, good wins. And you can do a lot of really interesting things. We have I'm going to say it, Jobies show up and help us out. We have D. Malay there. We have the Deputy Grand Commander there. And if you want to come, hit me with a little email. If you live in Minnesota or are going to be here, just let me know. It's the 6th. I know, I just plugged something. And other than that, this has been a really good and fun discussion. Thanks, John. Thanks, Jason.
Thank you, Nick, for, again, dropping some knowledge bombs on us. Jason?
So we've devolved into meme sharing on the Facebook page. So go and check those out. Thanks so much for everybody who's watching with us live, for all the great discussions you're prompting. I absolutely love the social media part of the show. It's one of my favorite parts of doing this. As far as religious observances are concerned, I think it's, again, a great way to build community and strengthen the ties between one fraternity that cares very much about the community and the community it supports. So just be respectful, of course, and make sure you aren't an imposition to the communities with which you engage. But do it because when you travel to other Masonic lodges and other Masonic jurisdictions, you learn a whole lot. It's the same thing with other cultures and other faith communities. You don't have to ascribe to it or believe in it to learn a lot from it. And I think Masonry and we as Masons have the ability to transcend some of those boundaries to take the good and take the lessons learned out of those areas that might not hold parity with our own personal belief systems.
Mm-hmm. Cool. Thank you, Jason. So in conclusion, I'm still the weird one out, where I think it's a uncomfortable zone only because of I just treat them as two separate parts of my identity. And so what fascinated me about this topic was that I'm a Knights Templar as well, and our commander every year does the Easter service on the steps of the George Washington Masonic Memorial. I've always thought about going. The pictures look good every year, just to see what it's all about. Unfortunately, they do it at sunrise, which is early, and they do it on Easter morning, when I really traditionally, with my family, want to get my family together and go to our local church. So it's kind of like I would be going away from my community of my family and my local church to do that. So it hasn't driven me there yet. But again, if it works and if it's a good tradition that everyone feels comfortable with, and especially when you get into some of the more chivalric orders, then by all means keep up that tradition and keep that community going. But if you're like me and are still on the fence, again, check it out. What have you got there, Nick? Oh, there's a picture of right on the steps of the George Washington Masonic Memorial, the Sunrise Easter service. So you can see it's a well-attended event. Hundreds of guys in chapeaus out there doing what they do. I learned a lot as well. Thank you, Nick, for that. And that's all I got. Thank you very much for watching. Keep searching for more light. Have a good night.